Welcome everyone to the fourth lecture on representations of finite groups. So we are now going into little deeper aspects of the subject, and the main idea here is what is called the character of a representation. So let us name this section as character theory. Character theory, and this goes back to Frobenius and Isaiah. So what is the idea here? Idea here is that given a representation phi of your group G into some GLV, we want to encode the information that is carried by this representation into maps, complex valid map from groups into C called characters. So we want to encode information about your representation phi into maps from G into the ground field, which is the field of complex numbers here. Okay, so for that we need to build up some machinery. So let us begin with let me recall for you what do you mean by equivalence of two representations. You have two representation phi from G to GLV and psi from G to GLW. Okay, then a morphism from the representation V phi to the representation W psi, and some books will simply write morphism from phi to psi. Okay, so just for clarity, I'm just writing V also. Okay, although many books will not write it. Then a morphism from one representation to other representation, or in some books will also call it intertwiner, or a equivalent map is a linear map. See, linear map T from V to W that makes this square commute. So from V to V, W to W. Okay, so you have this linear map, and for each group element you have this phi G linear invertible linear transformation, and here you have psi G, that this square commute, whether this go this way or this way, it commutes. Okay, for all G. All right, and when your T is invertible linear transformation, then you say the two representations are equivalent. All right, so one can make some observations about the morphisms of two representations. Okay, if you look at the set of all representations, finite dimensional representations of a given group, okay, then the relation of being equivalent is an equivalence relation, right? You can easily check that. So let us make some basic observations about morphisms of representations. Here is one proposition. So let us say, let T from V to W be a morphism from the representation V phi to the representation W psi of your group G. And since T is actually a linear map, you can talk about the kernel and you cannot talk about the image of that. It turns out that the kernel of T is in fact a G invariant subspace of V under the representation phi, and image of T is a G invariant subspace of W under the representation psi. Then kernel of T is a G invariant subspace of V, and image of T is a G invariant subspace very simple observation. All right. So let us say V belong to kernel of T. To show this G invariant, I have to show is invariant to every group element, and let us say G belong to a group element, be a group element. All right. So then, what is T of phi G of V? See, phi G of V is again an element of V, right? My claim is that phi G of V is also in kernel. To show this in kernel, I should apply T, right? So, but I know that T is a morphism of representation, so this is same as psi G of T of V. But now V is in the kernel of T, so it is psi G of 0. But psi G is a linear map, 0 goes to 0, so it is 0. And this happens for all group element G in G, right? So this implies that phi G of V belong to kernel of T, all right, for all V in kernel of T and for all group element G in G. So this implies that is equivalent to saying that kernel of T is a G invariant subspace of your representation space V. Okay, and similarly one can easily show that image T is G invariant, so I am not going to write it down. Similarly one can show that image of this morphism of representations is a G invariant subspace of the representation space W. Okay, very simple observations. So let us make one more observation here. Let us write it as a proposition. All right. So now fixing a group G and two representations of the group G, you look at all the morphism from one representation to the other representation, right? So this is just certain set of home VW, okay, the space of linear transformation from V to W. It turns out that it is in fact a subspace, okay. So before that, let us set some notation that will be useful later on. Subspace. So if you have two representation phi from G to GLV and psi from G to GLW, then we denote the set of all morphisms from the representation V phi to the representation W psi by, since each morphism is actually linear map, so it is home VW, but it is not all not all linear map from V to W. They are actually equivalent under this action. They preserve the action, they make the square commute. So let us write some sub G. This is a standard notation. So the proposition is that if you are given two representation phi and psi, and look at the set of all morphisms from first representation to the second representation, then the proposition is that in fact home GVW is a subspace of home VW, okay, the set of all linear transformation from V to W. This is a very simple proof. All right, so let us do it in one step. So let us say T1 comma T2 belong to home G VW, and alpha beta B2 complex numbers. Take two morphisms from V to W and take two scalars. My claim is that their linear combination is also a morphism, and that will show it's a subspace, right? So to show that, again I need to check that commutativity of the diagram, which you can see that is written right here. So just consider alpha T1 plus beta T2. This is your new man. This is of course a linear transformation from V to W, and this should act on phi G of V. All right. But you see the sum of two linear operator is a linear operator, so it acts in the standard way. So this is just same as alpha of T1 acting on phi G of V plus beta of T2 acting on phi G of V. All right. But what is this? This is just same as alpha acting on T1 of V, but we know that T1 and T2 are morphisms, so that is same as alpha of psi g of T1 acting on V plus beta of psi g, okay, of T2 acting on V, right? Psi g is a linear map, so you can bring the scalar in, so you can write it as psi g acting on alpha T1 plus beta T2, okay, and this acting on V. So if you call this as, let us say, T, what you have shown is that T phi GV is same as psi g TV, exactly this equation, okay. So therefore the set of all morphisms from one representation to other representation is in fact the subspace of the space of all linear map from the vector space V to the vector space W. So let's prove Schur's lemma. It's a very important lemma and will be used frequently later on. So it tells you what kind of morphisms you can have between two irreducible representations of a group. Okay. So let phi from G to GLV and psi from G to GLW be two irreducible representations of a group G, and let T be a morphism. So T belong to home G, V, W. Then what can you say about this T? And the answer is pretty simple. Then T is either invertible, that is T is an isomorphic equivalence of two representations, or T is actually a zero linear operator. Okay, very straightforward statement. So if your T is already 0, then we are done. Suppose that T is not 0. Suppose that T is not equal to 0. Then recall that kernel of T, which is a subspace of V, is a G invariant subspace of V, right? G from the previous proposition is a G invariant subspace. Okay, and the representation phi is given to be irreducible. Therefore, kernel of T has to be either the trivial subspace or the full space. So thus, kernel of T has to be either 0 or kernel of T has to be the full space V. But if kernel of T is full space V, that means that T is 0, which is not true. We are assuming it not equal to 0. So this implies that kernel of T has to be singleton 0. Okay, that means that is your map T is actually an injective map. Is injective. All right. Now similarly, image of T is a G invariant subspace of W. Again from the previous proposition, is a G invariant subspace of W. Okay. Then again, because the representation psi from G to GLW is also given to be irreducible, so image T is either 0 or full W. So image of T is either singleton 0 or image of T is full W. Alright. But if image of T is 0, what does that mean? That means T is a 0 operator, but we are assuming non-zero. So this implies that image of T is the full space W, and that if and only if T is surjective, T is surjective. Okay, and hence T is an isomorphism. Okay, this is Schur's lemma. One can write some interesting consequences of Schur's lemma. So corollary number 1, if phi from G to GLV and psi from G to GLW are two irreducible representations, and phi is not equivalent to psi, then what can you say about the space of morphisms from V to W? Then Hom G VW turns out to be singleton zero space. Okay, there is only trivial morphism from V to W if they are not equivalent. And second, again V, phi and psi are two irreducible representations. Okay, and if phi and psi are the same, is the same representation, then any T belonging to Hom G VW is of the form T equals to lambda times identity, where lambda is a complex number. Complete description. Okay, and third point, if phi is equivalent to psi, then what is this vector space or morphism from V to W? This vector space is just one dimensional vector space. Okay, it is isomorphic to C. Let us prove them. Okay, so if for the first part, so if phi is not equivalent to psi, then what kind of morphism you can have? If phi not equal to psi and T belong to Hom G VW, then by Schur's lemma, T is either 0 or T is invertible. But if T is invertible, the representations are equivalent. So by Schur's lemma, T should be 0. Okay, and hence the conclusion, assertion that this Hom G VW, okay, of two inequivalent representation is just a trivial space. Of course, we are assuming the representations are irreducible. Okay, so you cannot have any non-trivial morphism between two inequivalent representations of a group. Secondly, if phi is psi and say T belong to Hom G VW, then what can you say about this T? Okay, so here is the first instance where we are going to use the fact that we are working over the field of complex numbers. So please pay attention. Since C is algebraically closed, T has an eigenvalue in C. In fact, all eigenvalues lie in C. Okay, so let lambda be an eigenvalue of T, all right. And also we know that this space of all morphism from V to V is a linear subspace of Hom VV, right? So then T minus lambda times identity. So T is a morphism, identity is of course a morphism, scalar multiple of a morphism, and this difference is a morphism. So this also belongs to Hom G VV, right? But what kind of morphism it is? Remember that lambda is an eigenvalue. So therefore there exists a non-zero vector V such that T minus lambda I of V is 0. All right, that means T is not invertible. So since lambda is an eigenvalue of the operator T, T minus lambda I is not invertible. Okay, but V is an irreducible representation, and you have a morphism from V to V which is not invertible, so it has to be 0. So by Schur's lemma t minus lambda I has to be 0, that means t equal to lambda I. Okay, so this proves our second assertion. And assertion number 3 is immediate. So if phi is equivalent to psi, it is the same as this case. Okay, then Hom VW, okay, is just lambda times identity, where lambda is complex numbers. Okay, so it is isomorphic to C. So this proves the corollary. Another interesting consequence of Schur's lemma is the following corollary. Every irreducible representation of an abelian group is of degree 1. Every irreducible representation of an abelian group is degree 1 or one dimensional. Some books will call it dimension, some call it degree. Okay, so let us prove it. So let phi from G to GLV be an irreducible representation of an abelian group G. Abelian group G. Okay, I will show that then V has to be one dimensional vector space, or the representation is degree 1. All right, so let us take a group element. So let G belong to G be an element. Okay, then phi G acting on phi H acting on V. Okay, where H is another group element. It is same as what? This is same as phi of G, phi of H acting on V, because it's an action, and phi is a homomorphism, right? So it is same as phi of GH acting on V. And now here use the fact that your group is abelian, so this is same as phi of HG acting on V, but that is same as phi H into phi G acting on V. That is same as phi H acting on phi G of V. Okay, and this happens for every H in the group G. So this tells you that this phi G is a morphism of the V to itself. Thus, phi G belong to Hom G V V. All right, and V is given to be an irreducible representation. And in the previous corollary, we showed that if you are given a morphism of an irreducible representation to itself, then it is a scalar multiple of the identity. So by the preceding corollary, we have that this phi G should be scalar multiple of identity. So because the scalar will depend on the group element, let us call it lambda G times identity, where lambda G is a scalar. Okay, and remember that G was an arbitrary element. This tells you that each element of the group G, the corresponding operator here is scaling of identity operator. Or if V is any non-zero vector in your vector space V, then you know that it is G equivalent, because then phi G going to be what? It is just lambda G times identity acting on V, right? So it is just lambda G times V. Okay, and which is of course lies in the subspace spanned by V. Thus, and this should happen for every group element. So thus subspace spanned by any element, any non-zero vector V is a G invariant subspace of V, is a G invariant subspace of your vector space V. But V is given to be phi is given to be an irreducible representation, and you have got a non-zero G invariant subspace. So what is the possibility? Then this non-zero G invariant subspace should be full space. So thus your V should be spanned by this non-zero vector. Okay, that is phi is degree 1 representation. Okay, very interesting observation. Every irreducible representation of an abelian group is one dimensional. It is simply a map from the abelian group into C star. And in fact, we will determine all such maps. Okay, if you work a little, you can actually find it yourself. Let's write one more interesting consequence of Schur's lemma. So here is the corollary. Let G be a finite abelian group and phi from G to GLV a representation of G. Then there exists an invertible matrix A such that A inverse phi sub GA is diagonal for every little g in G. So let's prove it. So since the group is given to be finite, so by Maschke's theorem, every representation of a finite group is completely reducible. Remember that finiteness was used there crucially. Okay. In fact, I spent some time discussing that issue and gave a counterexample where this fails. Okay. So since the representation is completely reducible, just by definition, phi is equivalent to a direct sum of finitely many irreducible representations. Alright, that means there is an invertible linear transformation of the vector space to itself such that this representation is equivalent to this via the transformation A. So the corresponding matrix we denoted by A only. Alright, but the preceding corollary tells you that every irreducible representation of an abelian group is degree 1. That is, each of these phi I is actually degree 1. Okay, phi I of little g is just a complex number. So therefore, for each g in G, phi sub g is what? A inverse times the matrix of the right hand side times A. But the matrix of this is just a block matrix, and each block is just 1 by 1 size. So it is phi g is actually equivalent to a diagonal matrix. This proves the corollary. So let's write some more consequences of Schur's lemma. Let me call it a proposition. Let phi from G to GLV be an irreducible representation of a group G. And ZG be its center. So let me recall for you center. It is all those group element G such that GH equal to HG for all H in the group G. Okay. So center is a normal subgroup of the group G. Then this proposition tells you how an irreducible representation behaves on the center elements. Then if A belong to center of the group G, then what is phi sub A? It turns out that phi sub A is just lambda time identity for some lambda belonging to C. But note that phi is a representation, so each element of the group G under phi is actually invertible linear transformation, so actually you should definitely land here in C star. Okay, so what is the proof? Simple-minded observe something similar that we already did in the proof of one of the fact that every irreducible representation of an abelian group is one-dimensional. Okay, so let A belong to ZG be an element. Then observe the following: phi A acting on phi G acting on any vector element is just same as phi A phi G acting on V. That is same as phi of AG acting on V. But now A is a central element. It will compete with every group element. So it is same as phi of GA acting on V, that is same as phi G into phi A acting on V, right? That is same as phi G of phi A of V. This should happen for all group element in the group G. So what does it tell you? Phi A belong to home sub G VV, and V is an irreducible representation. So by one of the corollaries of the Schur's lemma, phi A has to be a scalar multiple. So by Schur's lemma, phi A should be a scalar multiple of the identity, but phi A is invertible, so of course this lambda should belong to C star. It should not be 0. Okay. Very interesting observation. So it's a very general fact. So let us prove one more fact about degree 1 representations. So proposition, let phi G to C star, which is GLC, be a degree 1 representation of a group G. Okay, and let G prime be the commutator subgroup of G. So you may recall that commutator subgroup is a subgroup generated by commutators GH, which by definition is GH, G inverse, H inverse, where G and H are elements of the group G. Okay, it's a normal subgroup of the group G. Be the commutator subgroup of your group G. Then my claim is that this degree 1 representation actually comes from a degree 1 representation of the abelianization of G, that is G mod G prime. There exists a representation, let us say psi from G mod G prime, because G prime is a normal subgroup of G, so G mod G prime is again a group. So there is a representation psi from G mod G prime into a C star, such that your original representation phi can be written as pi composed with psi, where pi from G to G mod G prime is the natural quotient map. Okay, if you are given a degree 1 representation of any group, then it comes from a degree 1 representation of its abelianization. Okay, and for abelian groups we will have a complete description of degree 1 representation, which are also irreducible representations. Okay, so therefore degree 1 representation of any group you can more or less find out if you know what the abelianization is. All right, so let's prove this. So since phi is a map from G to C star, and C star is an abelian group, where C star is an abelian group, it follows that phi acting on any generator of the commutator subgroup, so phi acting on, apply it on any commutator G comma H, what is this going to be? This by definition is going to be phi of G H G inverse H inverse. Phi is a homomorphism, so it goes in, it becomes phi of G, phi of H, phi of G inverse, phi of H inverse. But where is this element? This element is in C star, which is abelian, so it get cancelled, this just becomes 1. So what you see that any group homomorphism from a group into an abelian group kills the commutator subgroup. That is, the commutator subgroups lies in the kernel. this induces a group homomorphism let us call it psi from G mod G prime into your C star. Okay, and in fact you can write down how it is given by psi will act on any coset, let us say G prime, and how does it act? It just act as phi acting on G. And what is your original map phi? Original map phi is just quotient map composed with your psi, right? Because if you take any little g in g's, then pi of g become g prime, and then you apply psi. Okay, this is exactly your phi is. So this proves the proposition. Alright, I will stop here, and in the next class we will develop character theory starting with the orthogonality relations.